I transmigrated into a tragic novel. The system wants me to torment the male lead, but I refuse. Prologue. The error in the code where fiction becomes a cage. Jian-Yu didn't believe in fate. He believed in instant noodles, late-night web novels, and his terrible habit of getting emotionally attached to fictional men who didn't exist, especially tragic ones, like Rui Feng, the broken, brilliant male lead of Crimson Chains. He had devoured the novel in 2 nights. Rui Feng was betrayed, enslaved, tortured by a sadistic crown prince, and finally rose to power only to burn everything, including himself, in revenge. It was beautiful. It was awful. It made Jian-Yu cry so hard. He had to use his laundry pile as a tissue. Who even writes stuff this cruel? He muttered. This poor guy didn't deserve half of it. And the crown prince? What a monster. If I were there, I'd save him. Famous last words, because the next morning, Jian-Yu woke up in a bed too large, too cold, and too real. He blinked at the canopy of gold silk, the embroidered phoenix patterns, the chilling silence. Then the voice came. System initialized. Welcome, host. You have been selected for plot rehabilitation protocol. You are now inhabiting Crown Prince Lin Xian. Primary mission: torment the male lead. Stage 1: break his pride. Stage 2: destroy his hope. Stage 3: fall. Jian-Yu shot up in bed. What? Warning. Deviating from your role will destabilize the narrative. He looked into the tall, polished mirror across the chamber. The face staring back was unfamiliar handsome, cold-eyed, noble. The very villain he had hated while reading. Lin Xian. And the story? It had already begun. Somewhere in the palace courtyard, Rui Feng knelt chained, bruised, waiting for his tormentor. Waiting for him, Jian-Yu gritted his teeth. No, he said aloud. I won't do it. I won't be your villain. The system buzzed. Uncertain. Host rejection detected. Incompatible behavior. Narrative error imminent. Jian-Yu smiled grimly. Good. Then let it error. Because this wasn't just fiction anymore. This wasn't a sad little story written in blood. And Rui Feng, he wasn't a plot device. He was real now. And Jian-Yu had already decided he would protect Haim even if it meant breaking the story apart. And somewhere deep in the palace code, a thread of fate snapped. The system had made one critical mistake. It chose the wrong villain. Chapter 1. A Prince Who Kneels. The golden sun poured over the grand palace courtyard, gilding every stone with arrogant warmth. Ministers stood in neat lines. Nobles and guards formed a circle of spectators. In the center knelt a single boy in chains, Rui Feng's head bowed, wrists bloodied by tight shackles, a swollen bruise blooming across his cheek. He had just been delivered to the crown prince as a gift. A noble, born enemy turned into a slave by political betrayal. A trophy, a pet, a tool for humiliation. Jian-Yu, inside the body of Crown Prince Lin Xian, knew this scene well. He had read it in the novel. This was where the tragedy began. The original Lin Xian was supposed to scoff, kick Rui Feng in the ribs, and say, "You belong beneath my feet now." But Jian-Yu, who now controlled Lin Xian's body, froze. System prompt. Mission: begin stage 1. Humiliate the male lead. Spit, kick, break his pride. Jian-Yu inhaled deeply, his heart thudding with nausea. This wasn't just fiction anymore. The people, the emotions, the pain, it all felt real. Too real. And then, defying both history and programming, he stepped forward and knelt. Gasps rippled through the crowd. A prince, kneeling for a slave, he reached out and gently lifted the boy's chin. No one should treat you like that. Rui Feng's eyes rose to meet his startled, guarded, but unwavering. His lip was split, blood trailing down his chin, yet his gaze didn't flinch. "What game is this, Your Highness?" Rui Feng asked in a rough, rasping voice. Jian-Yu saw the fear behind his defiance. The boy was bracing for cruelty masked as kindness. But Jian-Yu simply smiled, soft and warm. "Let's just say I'm rewriting the script." The crowd didn't know what to make of it. Ministers exchanged glances. The captain of the guard flinched, unsure whether to intervene or stay still. The old Lin Xian would have ensured Rui Feng was publicly disgraced. Instead, Jian Yu ordered his release. Unchain him. He's to be treated as a palace guest. Gasps again. Your Highness, this slave, a courtier began, is no longer a slave. Jian Yu cut him off coldly. Disobey me and you disobey the crown. The guards obeyed reluctantly. Rui Feng staggered to his feet, confusion flickering across his face as the shackles clattered to the marble floor. He didn't thank Lin Xian, didn't smile. He simply stood tall, despite the pain, his dignity, like an invisible cloak, around his tattered robes. And Jian Yu felt something stir in his chest, a dangerous warmth. Later that night, in his chambers, Jian Yu sat alone while the golden script of the system interface hovered before him like a ghost. Warning: emotional affection level rising beyond parameters. Mission status deviated. Timeline destabilizing. He stared at it, and then muttered, "Good. Let it break." Subtext and emotional layer. This chapter isn't just about defiance, it's a declaration. It marks the exact point where Jian Yu begins taking control of the narrative and rewrites Rui Feng's destiny, where the villain becomes a protector, where the hero is allowed to heal. Rui Feng doesn't trust Lin Xian yet, but something about the prince's unexpected gentleness has shaken his worldview. For Jian Yu, it's the beginning of his emotional entanglement with Rui Fenga. Doesn't just want to defy the system, he feels drawn to this broken, beautiful soul. And the system designed to follow a tragedy script is already glitching. Chapter 2. Chains. Choices. It had been 3 days since Rui Feng was brought to the palace and granted guest status. But in truth, the change was only cosmetic. Though unchained, he remained under scrutiny by ministers, servants, concubines, and especially the hidden watchers of the system. Lin Xian, meanwhile, was rewriting the novel line by line, refusing to punish Rui Feng, letting him roam the garden, eat at the same table, even offering him books and clean clothes. But the palace was not kind to disruptions. Rui Feng had been tending to the lotus pond under the afternoon suna, a small task meant to symbolize humility, an indirect punishment masked as rehabilitation, a manipulative leftover from the Empress's court. He never complained, until he collapsed. His legs gave out and he fell face first into the gravel path. His palms scraped raw. A low murmur spread through the courtyard. The servants didn't move. The guards only stared. Only Lin Xian, who had heard the news and arrived mid-fall, rushed forward. Without hesitation, he knelt in the dirt, gathered Rui Feng into his arms, and lifted him like something precious. Gasps fluttered like moths through the crowd. The crown prince is carrying a servant? Is he mad? She'll have his head for this. The whispers were blades, but Lin Xian walked with steady steps, his robe stained with dust, his jaw clenched. Rui Feng's breathing was shallow, his brow clammy. The inner chambers. Lin Xian laid Rui Feng on his own silk-laden bed, something no one outside a consort had ever touched. The palace physicians were waved away. He insisted on treating Rui Feng himself. He gently cleaned the wounds, pressing a damp cloth to bruises that hadn't yet faded from before their first meeting. The boy stirred. Eyelids fluttered open. His first words? Why? His voice was rough. Why are you doing this? The confession begins. Jian Yu paused. He wrung the cloth slowly, watching as water dripped back into the bowl like ticking time. I don't expect you to understand, he said quietly. But I see you, not just as a pawn in someone's story, not just as a slave, not even as the male led destined to destroy me. He looked directly into Rui Feng's gray eyes. I see you, as a person, and he faltered, the weight of what he felt creeping too fast, too soon. He had never believed in love at first sight, but this wasn't infatuation, it was recognition that Rui Feng had been broken by a world he didn't deserve, and Jian Yu wanted it to give him peace. Even if the system burned, even if the palace turned against them both. The moment, Jian Yu reached for the silk bandage, when suddenly Rui Feng's hand touched his. Warm, calloused, hesitant, a small touch. But to Jian Yu, it felt like a thunderclap. The boy didn't speak again, but he didn't pull away. That was enough. That night, Jian Yu sat beside Rui Feng as he slept, watching the flicker of candlelight dance across his soft features. The system buzzed again. Alert. Emotional intimacy exceeding safe threshold. You are destabilizing the tragedy timeline. And Jian Yu leaned back, smiled at the ceiling, and whispered, "Good." Subtext: emotional development. This chapter shifts their relationship from tentative curiosity to the first spark of emotional trust. Rui Feng, conditioned to expect cruelty in every kind gesture, begins to lower his guard for the first time in years. Jian Yu, fully aware that the system may soon retaliate, chooses compassion over control, caring for Rui Feng, not out of duty, but love. It's the first moment where Rui Feng begins to see Lin Xian not as a prince, not as an enemy, but as something far more dangerous, a safe place. Chapter 3. The system strikes back, the calm before. For a brief moment, the palace quieted. Rui Feng, though wary, began walking without flinching. He was reading in the sunlight and helping the gardeners prune the moonflowers. At night, he shared quiet meals with Lin Xian, speaking only when he felt like it, but his gaze lingered longer each time. The guards no longer laughed when he passed, but the peace was a fragile bubble, and the system was watching. System log. Narrative divergence at 67%. Intervention protocol activated. The turn. One rainy evening, Rui Feng disappeared. No warning, no noise, just gone. Jian Yulin Jian turned the palace upside down. His heartbeat thundered in his ears. No one dared stop him as he burst into the west wing. Through open doors, interrogated guards. No one had seen anything. That's when a terrified eunuch whispered, "The old dungeons, beneath the outer halls, the Empress still uses them." Jian Yu didn't wait for his guards. The dungeon. The old corridors stank of rust, mold, and betrayal. Jian Yu descended with nothing but a lantern and a dagger hidden in his robes, and there beneath a flickering torch found Rui Feng, chained, bloody, shivering, eyes wide with pain and disbelief. "I knew," Rui Feng croaked, lips split. "I knew it was too good to last." Jian Yu's heart shattered. "I didn't do this," he said, falling to his knees beside him. "I swear it wasn't me." The system flickered in his mind. This course corrects the emotional arc. Proceed to phase 2. Betrayal. Induced awakening. "You're sick," Jian Yu hissed into the empty air. "He's not your puppet." He shattered the shackles with a dagger, sliced his own palm in the process, and lifted Rui Feng into his arms again. "You're safe now." But Rui Feng trembled, torn between trust and survival. "Why?" he whispered again. "Why risk everything for me?" The next day, Lin Xian stood before the imperial court, carrying Rui Feng into the throne room like a vow carved into flesh. "I am invoking royal decree," he said calmly, though his voice carried like a blade. "If Rui Feng is harmed again, by any hand, noble or low, I will abdicate. Let the throne rot." The Empress's face twisted in fury. "He is a slave. He is mine," Lin Xian said, eyes burning gold. "And I will burn this palace before I let you touch him again." Rui Feng lay in bed, bandaged, silent. Lin Xian sat nearby, hands bloody, clothes still stained from his descent. For a long time, neither spoke. Then Rui Feng said softly, "You're not like the man they describe." Lin Xian looked up. "Because I'm not." "You were supposed to break me," Rui Feng said. "I still might," Jian Yu whispered with a sad smile, "but only by making you feel safe." Then, slowly, Rui Feng reached out just like before and pressed his hand over Lin Xian's. Their fingers laced together, and something inside both of them clicked into place. That same moment, the system's screen glitched violently. The system, representing the cruel expectations of the original plot, lashes out violently to restore the tragedy arc. Rui Feng, the story's tool of vengeance, is nearly broken again, but this time, someone chooses him. Lin Xian doesn't hesitate. He challenges not just the court, but the code of fate itself. This is the first moment Rui Feng fully begins to believe he's not alone. Love is no longer a whisper, it's a roar, and the system is beginning to lose control. Chapter 4. What was never written. Since the dungeon incident, the palace had grown colder. Not literally, but politically. Ministers avoided the court. The empress grew silent and calculating. Whispers no longer dared bloom in open air. Servants bowed deeper, moved quicker. Even the breeze that swept the silk curtains of the eastern pavilion felt like it tiptoed past Lin Xian. But inside the crown prince's chambers, something else bloomed entirely. Rui Feng smiled. Not often, not broadly, but he did. He slept on silken pillows and awoke without chains. He ate warm food, sat beside Lin Xian at low tables, laughed once at a terrible poem the prince recited. His eyes still held shadows, but they softened whenever they met Lin Xian's gaze. A forgotten joy. One afternoon, Lin Xian found Rui Feng seated under a blossoming plum tree, sketching with charcoal onto parchment. It was a half-finished image of a lotus pond, elegant and delicate, yet unsteady, like the hand that drew it wasn't used to being free. "You paint?" Lin Xian asked, surprised. Rui Feng shrugged, not looking up. "I used to. Before the betrayals. Before the palace. Before the chains. I didn't know slaves could draw." Lin Xian teased gently. Rui Feng looked up then, half smirking. "We're full of surprises, Your Highness." "Then surprise me again," Lin Xian said, kneeling beside him. "Show me a version of you this world tried to erase." And so Rui Feng painted, and Lin Xian fell in love with every brushstroke. The original hero rises, but outside the garden walls, the old story was rearing its head. In the novel, Rui Feng's absence as the male lead would have caused the second lead to rise, General Wei Jin, a cunning war hero destined to destroy the imperial family and avenge Rui Feng. With Rui Feng now loved and protected, the timeline spun out of control. Wei Jin gathered military support and claimed treason against the crown prince. He marched toward the capital, unaware that his beloved Rui Feng was no longer a symbol of tragedy, but of survival. That night, system appeared in force. Golden script filled Lin Xian's vision, trying to control. Emergency restoration protocol activated. Erase Rui Feng's memories, rewrite their arc, offer the host absolute power in return. Last chance to follow the plot. And for a single breath, Jian Yu hesitated. All he had to do was say yes. Rui Feng would forget everything. He could be spared from danger. Lin Xian could ascend the throne, loved and safe. But the image of Rui Feng's half-smile under the plum blossoms burned brighter in his heart. He clenched his jaw. "Go to hell," the system stuttered. "Command not recognized." "You heard me," he said aloud. "I'd rather die with him free than rule with him broken." Rui Feng overhears. Unbeknownst to Jian Yu, Rui Feng had been standing by the doorway. He heard it all. For a long moment, he stood frozen, then approached quietly. "You would choose me over everything?" he asked softly. Lin Xian turned, startled, then nodded without a trace of hesitation. "Every time." Rui Feng stepped forward, close enough to touch. "No one has ever chosen me. Not once." "I'm not no one," Lin Xian said. Rui Feng, trembling, did the unthinkable. He kissed. Not because of gratitude, but because finally believed he was worth loving. Subtext, emotional layer. This chapter reflects the heart of transformation. Rui Feng evolves from victim to beloved, and Lin Xian from tyrant to protector. This is where they both choose each other, not because of a forced script, but because of who they are becoming together. The romance is no longer subtle, it's blooming. It's active defiance of fate. The system, once all-powerful, is now merely a scrambling shadow in the wake of real human emotion. The tragedy arc is officially broken, but war is coming. Chapter 5. Rewrite the Stars General. Wei Jin's army stood at the capital gates. They bore banners of justice, rebellion, and the false belief that Rui Feng still lay broken behind palace walls. Wei Jin had raised the rebellion in Rui Feng's name, believing his old friend needed salvation from the cruel crown prince. But the truth? Rui Feng now stood beside Lin Xian on the palace balcony wearing silver-embroidered robes, no longer a slave, but an equal. The people stared, uncertain. Was this the victim? Was this the spark of war? Or was this something never written at all? Facing the crowd and army below, Lin Xian raised his voice. I will not fight my people to defend a lie. Let them come. Let them see him. And with that, he took Rui Feng's hand publicly, proudly, in front of thousands. Gasps rippled through the crowd. Rui Feng stepped forward. No chains, no fear. I am not your symbol of vengeance, he declared. I was hurt, but I am not broken. And this man, he looked to Lin Xian, voice softer, saved me. In that moment, history cracked open. Some soldiers dropped their weapons. Others knelt. Wei Jin, from his warhorse, stared in stunned disbelief. The final confrontation. That night, Wei Jin breached the palace alone. He came not as a general, but as a grieving friend. He stormed the throne hall, sword drawn, only to find Rui Feng waiting not chained, but seated beside Lin Xian in the court chamber, crown resting on the steps between them. Rui Feng, Wei Jin said bitterly. You were mine, to avenge. I never asked for that, Rui Feng replied gently. You were fighting a ghost. I'm here. I chose this. Wei Jin's sword trembled. You love him? He asked, accusing. Rui Feng didn't hesitate. Yes. Wei Jin dropped the blade. Then, I have no war left to fight. System collapse. The system made one final attempt. Critical failure. Love route. Fully engaged. Narrative terminated. Fatal exception. Hope cannot be rewritten. Jian Yu smiled as the golden interface flickered and faded for good. The world no longer belonged to the author's tragedy. It was theirs now. Their coronation. Weeks later, the empress was exiled. The ministers bent knee to a new future. Rui Feng was crowned not as a slave, but as imperial consort. First decree was to abolish slavery and rewrite palace law. Together, they ruled as flame and moonlight strength and mercy warrior healer. At night, when the halls were empty, Lin Xian would rest his head on Rui Feng's lap, whispering, We rewrote the stars. And Rui Feng would smile softly. No, we just chose a different ending. Subtext. Emotional layer. This chapter is a declaration of power. The power of love over narrative, of free will over fate. Lin Xian doesn't just protect Rui Feng, gives him a throne, a voice, a future. Rui Feng, once a tool for tragedy, becomes a leader in his own right. The love between them isn't loud or overly dramatic. It's tender, earned, and undeniable. It reshapes a kingdom. The system's failure is not coded as destruction, but surrender. Because love, once genuine, is the one thing it can never overwrite. Epilogue. The palace was quieter now, filled not with political tension or the whispers of rebellion, but the soft, content sounds of birds nesting in the garden trees, laughter spilling from the kitchens, and the gentle creak of the wooden swing in the inner courtyard, where two men sat side by side. Lin Xian, once crown prince, now emperor, in name only, wore no crown. His long hair was tied back casually, his robe light and loose. He no longer needed symbols to command respect. And Rui Feng, once a slave, now consort and co-ruler, leaned lazily against his shoulder, a book of old poetry resting in his lap. They didn't need to speak these days. Silence between them was warm. Sometimes, at night, Lin Xian still heard the phantom hum of the old system in his dreams. Its commands, its warnings, its desperation. But now, when he woke, Rui Feng's hand would already be resting over his heart, grounding him. You're safe, Rui Feng would whisper, half asleep. We both are. Mornings filled with soft plum blossoms and evenings wrapped in twilight and quiet kisses. They had abolished slavery across the empire, rewritten laws, raised orphanages, funded artists and poets. Rui Feng became the heart of the empire, quiet, but steadfast, wise beyond his years. And Lin Xian, who had once been destined to destroy him, became the man who protected his light at all costs. They were no longer bound by fate. They had become authors of their own story. He returned to the courtyard, where Rui Feng had fallen asleep under the plum tree, the light dusting of petals in his hair. He lay down beside him, brushed a blossom from his cheek, and whispered, "Thank you for letting me love you." Ruifeng, without opening his eyes, smiled. You never needed permission. And so, in a world born of tragedy, rewritten by choice, and healed by love, a prince and his consort live not happily ever after. True, unwritten, eternal.